All right. All right, so hello everyone. My name is Benjamin Harvey, and today I'm going to talk to you all about, this concept of delivering AI insights to business teams faster, okay? So before we start, I'll talk a little bit about my background. So I did 10 years at the National Security Agency. My last two positions there, I was their Chief of Operations Data Science, and I was also the lead data scientist for the Edward Snowden leaks. If anyone, I see some smiles across the room. So I did end up leaving the National Security Agency. I started working a couple of years at a Silicon Valley startup at the time. It was called Databricks. And really, the challenge that I saw during my time at the National Security Agency was the challenge of AI adoption, right? And if you think about what I was seeing from my vantage point was we had a ton of data scientists. In my organization, I had about 50 senior data scientists. And there was this particular challenge that was associated with they not being able to see the impact and the value of their models because they never made it into mission production applications. But on the other end of the spectrum, you had the intelligence analysts and the military warfighter. So these were the end users that needed the machine learning and the artificial intelligence in their workflows to help support decision making. And because of this is really the reason that I started a company called AI Squared. And if you think of the goal of this organization is really to, help and empower the, acceleration and the simplification of, that path of integration of artificial intelligence and machine learning into those end user applications, okay? So as we know, right, AI is revolutionizing every industry on the planet, right? And, the opportunity to drive value is tremendous. McKinsey and Company, for an example, estimates about $15.4 trillion in business value created by 2030, okay? Now, the challenge is that I saw it in the National Security Agency, and a lot of you in the audience are seeing it as well inside of your organizations, is that a lot of the investments are not paying off because there's an estimated 2 out of 3 AI projects that fail. Now, let's talk about this a little bit, all right? Where at an organization like, the National Security Agency, you can think of about 90% of models never made it into a mission production application. So why is this? And then on the other side of the coin, you have, about only, a small percentage of these executives that are saying that, these AI-powered solutions are being utilized within their organizations. Now, when you think of this challenge, it's really a two-sided problem. So a lot of organizations are deploying models, which is extremely difficult. But there's an additional step of embedding the machine learning where, when, as well as how the end users would like those machine learning results embedded within their workflows, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, building intelligent applications is even harder. So this is, so there's an example. We had an analyst at the National Security Agency. She came to us and she was one of the end users of our machine learning capabilities. And her particular problem was that we were getting the machine learning inside of the application, but in her opinion, the results weren't actionable. They weren't relevant. They weren't contextualized. They weren't timely, right? So because of this challenge, there was no trust on her end, and she would never use the results of the machine learning algorithm or the machine learning model to support her decision making for reporting is why she would need it. So if you think about the journey for organizations, this machine learning life cycle, as you all know, it starts with the data prep, building the models, the model deployment, all the way through to the application integration. We'll talk about that more in depth and detail in a second, all the way through to the results optimization, okay? Now, if you look at a lot of organizations, they're spending the majority of their time on the data preparation and the model building, right? So in my organization at the NSA, we had, some of the best data scientists. NSA is the #1 employer for mathematicians in the world, right? So there was a lot of data scientists that focused on building these world-class models, okay? I want, 99.9% accuracy for my computer vision model or my natural language processing model before we deploy it, okay? But then there was this additional step of, after you deploy the model, how do you then embed the results of the machine learning inside of the application, okay? And not just embed them, but we talked about this, right? Where they're actionable, they're relevant, they're timely, they're contextualized to really support that decision making, okay? And then finally, it's really the results optimization, right? And this really is twofold, where you can think about it as a technical accuracy problem, where you're thinking about computer vision, the F1 score, the recall, the precision, but also what we've seen for a lot of the end users, and this was a big challenge at the National Security Agency, was that a lot of organizations wanted to understand the impact and the value of the models within the workflows of the end users, right? Because it's one thing to have a model that's 99% accurate, but then was it actionable and was it contextualized to support decision making and provide the trust that's necessary for reporting, okay? And then finally, there's the feedback loop, right? So from the business teams back to the data teams, where they're providing a thumbs up, thumbs down associated with the polygon that's rendered around an object within a geospatial image, and providing that feedback back to the data team so that it can help increase the accuracy and the performance of those machine learning algorithms. So in the model deployment phase, we were seeing this at the NSA, and it was about 3 months to really deploy a single model, right? And when I say deploy, it's not just the translation of the underlying algorithm to the infrastructure that's going to support it on the enterprise side, but it's also ensuring that the machine learning algorithm can communicate effectively with the end user application in a way that you can very seamlessly get the results of the model inside of the application. But also, if you think about the instrumentation, right? So this is where organizations are spending a lot of time just adding a single button to a machine learning algorithm, to a single button to an application, so that they can see the results of this machine learning algorithm manifest, okay? So you can think of a recommender system where there might be a button in the application to identify the top 5 recommendations for a machine learning model, okay? So in this step, the challenge was that we were seeing from an enterprise perspective at the National Security Agency is that depending on the end user organization, there were a lot of requirements that specifically dealt with where the results were happening, when the results were happening, how to provide enrichment to the machine learning results that were embedded so that you can additionally have the contextualization to support that decision making. So there was this back and forth stage for a couple of months just to understand effectively how to optimize where we're providing the integration. And then after you go through that stage, there's this final piece of making sure from an accuracy perspective, from a performance perspective, all the way through to, how is this model impacting your workflow, right? what's the value that the organization is getting from this machine learning model? And one of the important things that we've seen is that we're working with a financial services organization, and the CDAO is very interested in how does he understand how to inform investments across the organization, right? Because traditionally, a lot of the machine learning capabilities have been identified from a top-down perspective. But the feedback that's necessary to understand the impact and the value can help at the CDAO level, the organization understand how much more investment should they actually put into this machine learning algorithm, right? So when you think about the results optimization, it's also the integration optimization so that you can understand the impact and the value of the machine learning and artificial intelligence. And then there's finally the feedback, which is extremely important, right? Where you have these silo teams, long timelines of development, 5 or 6 different machine learning, engineering professionals, data scientists, front-end developers, machine learning DevOps organizations that are all supplying resources in order to understand how to integrate the model, but also understand how to increase the accuracy and the performance. So how does AI squared help solve some of these problems, right? So the first thing we did from the machine learning perspective, and if you think about the model deployment phase, we created an open source technology that helps organizations, really focus on the conversion of a model all the way through to the optimization. And then we also created a way to automate and manage the models all the way from the point where you get the data, you get the results of the model into the app. And then the final thing is really the customization and the personalization of the results inside of those apps. And then the final thing is how do you create the feedback mechanisms that are necessary to empower the organization to get the feedback on the accuracy, but also the impact and the value of the models, okay? So last thing I'll show is really, where we fit is the middleware between the machine learning models and the end user application. So AI squared is focused on what we call reverse ML, but basically is, how do you get the results from the logic of the machine learning algorithms and then transform that and map that so that it can be used by end user applications. So, the final example I'll use is that working with a financial services organization, and they have a lead score model. It's a world-class lead score model. And they're using Microsoft Dynamics, the CRM tool. So one of the things that AI squared does is we've taken their, world-class, opportunity score model, and we've been able to integrate that directly inside of Microsoft Dynamics 365, which has cut 6.5 months of development time off of what they would originally had to have done to be able to integrate that machine learning algorithm inside of Microsoft Dynamics. So AI squared is really focused on, solving that AI integration problem, but it's more focused on that last mile, right? How do you not only integrate the machine learning, but not only how do you start providing that feedback that's necessary in order to update the value and the impact of the models? Thank you very much.